Here's the effect that we're going to get today. We're going to rotate the camera around in the scene so that it gives the impression that we're rotating around the world, or rotating around these different constellations. And then as we select different skills, they will increase in size so that we know that we've highlighted them. Okay. And then what's more is if we get to the end of a list, as we get around here, let's say that we don't have a 360 enough skills for a 360 loop, then what we're going to do is go from the end to the beginning, and from the end from the beginning to the end. Okay. Hi, and welcome back to the Skyrim-Like skill system tutorial. We are going to import a new asset into this project that's going to make it a lot more, the ambience a lot better. Okay, so this is the Real Stars Skybox Light by Jeff Dallimore. It's free on your Unity Asset Store, so go ahead and open up the Asset Store tab in the inspector, and then download this and import it into your project. It's going to make it look a lot better than just that normal blue or normal skybox that we have before. He's got a couple of different skyboxes in here. He's got the constellations names in here, and then he's got them segmented with these red lines. I'm just going to use the basic one that he's got, no names, no nothing, and we'll start this off from here. I think it looks a lot better with this. Here I'm going to explain how I did this. I've got this scroll view. I have put a new script on here called the scroll input control. We'll get into that in a second. First, I want to go over what I've changed about our skill container, because there's a pretty important change here. I've added an image. Okay, let's go in there. So on this main skill tree container, I've added an image, and on that I've added a button. Now, if we just have a regular button, you can change its transition from color tint to animation. Now, if you click, there's a. Let me try and do this from the beginning. Let me go ahead and put in another button here. I think we can put one right here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, we can change this to animation, and then we can click auto generate animation, and that'll give this a animator controller, an animator component. And then what we're going to do is go to that animator controller, or that animator, and click on the selected animation. We're going to take away loop time, so we disable loop time. We go into the animation for selected, and all we're going to do is, while you've got that container selected, you go into selected, and then you click record. You're going to go into a keyframe later on, and you're going to increase the scale of the object. Okay, and that'll automatically give you a keyframe here, and then you'll have that regular keyframe that it started at, where it's at scale 1. Okay, so that's the big difference there on the button itself, on the skill container itself. Now what we need to do is make sure that we've got, now in all skills UI, in the last video you saw that we had this this scroll input controller disabled. You're going to enable it. You're going to put this in. You're going to put in a reference to the scroll input control, and initialize it with that array of skill objects, those game objects that we had created last time. Okay, so you pass through those objects, and then we're going to go into that scroll input control, and I'm gonna walk you through it. Okay, so now we need a serialized reference to the scroll rect. So in order to get scroll rect, we need to pull in the Unity UI namespace. We're going to bring in a reference to our camera transform. So in the inspector, we've got this script on the scroll view. We have those serialized fields, we're going to pull in our scroll rect here, and we're going to grab our main camera and put that into the camera transform slot. Now, we have a reference to the buttons, and you'll see where we get those buttons, how we're going to fill that out. Now, I've got a private enum here, which is direction, which is the direction that we're moving as we go through this scroll view. Okay. Right now we've only got left and right, but this makes this more expandable. All right, so we could add up and down. Up, say for example, if we want to focus on our level bar and our perks, and down if we want to see like our health and mana and things like that. Okay, now I've got two serialized key codes for scrolling left and scrolling right. We could add scroll up or scroll down. Okay. Now, this is important for the scrolling between the skills that we've got here. We need a private int for current selection, and we'll default that to 0. Okay, so we'll always start with the first button in the list. Okay, then we need a private float for scroll speed, and this is how quickly we are rotating between those skill trees. Okay. Now, this float, time between selections, just makes it so that when we're clicking this key, right, we could just hold it down, and I'm just going to do that real quick. So I'm just holding it down, and that time is telling you how long, and I can increase that. So you'll see that I'm going to go a lot slower now. And that's because I've increased the time between selections. Now, if I have that as a really small number, then you're going to get this jittery motion, and it doesn't look good at all. I think 0.25 is a really good medium. Okay, I think that's a really good default value. All right, so that's what the time between selections is for, and that cooldown is what is not allowing us to just constantly scroll between all those different buttons. Okay. Now, we're calling this initialize skill input from all skills UI. So we initialize the skill input with skills objects, and as we pass those objects in, we're going to create a new array of buttons that is the length of those skill objects. Okay, that skill objects array. We're going to go ahead and create an iterator, and then we're going to do a for each loop on all of those objects. Okay. Then we're going to put in our, we're going to get the button component from each of those objects and cache it into that buttons array. Now we're creating a new int pointer, so for the current index that we're on right now, so that we can pass in a listener to the button. Okay, so that whenever we click a button on there, whenever we click a button here, we're going to select that button, and it's going to take us, it's going to animate us to that skill. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here. I'm selecting that button, and that's what we're looking at in this line right here, is we're adding that select button action. Okay, we have to create a new int, because if we just passed in I, then it would select a button that's at the end of the list. Okay. So if there is at least one button, then we're going to go ahead and select the first button in the list, and on update, if we hold down the scroll right key, obviously we're going to select the element to the right, and the opposite is true. If the cooldown's above 0, then we're going to reduce it by time.delta time. Now, select element. If our cooldown is greater than 0, we're just going to get out of this method. Okay, so that's what's preventing us from doing that, that just constant scrolling that makes the camera jitter. Okay, now we've got this switch, and for depending on the direction, we're going to check if we're at the end of the list. If we are at the end of the list, then we're going to go to, if we're at the very beginning of the list and we're scrolling to the left, then we're going to go to the last element on the list. Okay. And if we're on the last element of the list, then we'll scroll back to the first element. Okay. And if those cases aren't true, then we'll just go, in this case, left or right. Okay. Then, as we get out of here, we're going to select the button that we've just selected. So all we're doing in the switch is making sure that current selection is put on in the correct index, and then we're going to select the button at that index. Okay. So we actually need to call the button select method so that the animation will play. We're going to stop all the previous coroutines, and then we're going to start this new coroutine that animates us to the skill that we want to select. So our target position is going to be our index over the length of the array. Okay. So what that's saying is we want to go to this position in the scroll content view. So this has got like a horizontal position. So that's basically what we're looking at here is what section of that horizontal plane are we going to? Okay. And that's done by the index over the button's length. Okay. Now, while we are greater than 0.05 away, we are going to go ahead and animate. Okay. And that animation is going to be moving the scroll rect horizontal position from where it is currently to our target position on the x-axis. Okay, and we're moving by time.delta time against scroll speed. All right, then we're going to change the distance to the target, and that equals the target position minus the scroll rect horizontal position. We're going to rotate the camera on the up axis, on the y-axis, and we're going to rotate it by the distance from our target. Now we could change that. We could say that we rotate this a little bit more, a little bit less. Okay, but right now we're just going to rotate this distance from target amount. Okay, so while we are not at the target, we're going to just keep going through this. All right. And that's pretty much it. That's really all you have to have here. So make sure you take a good look at what we're doing here. Pause the video. Let's go down here. This is the big animation. This is really the heart of this whole script, is this animate to position. Okay, so one more time we'll take a look at it. Make sure, again, that you've got an image and a button on your skill tree container. Make sure that you've got that scroll input control on your I mean, honestly, it doesn't need to be on your scroll view. That's where I put it just so that I would know where it is. Okay, so using the A and the D buttons, that's all I have to do is scroll left and right with those, and I think it looks pretty good. In the next video, what we're going to do is make sure that these skills are related to actions that you're completing in your game world. So what we'll have to do is bring in a few more free assets just so that we get kind of a better prototype, so it'll look a little bit better, more like a real RPG game.